see David. I see Arnie. I don't see any Caddy.
She's supposed to be here soon. We'll see if she makes it, but she'll get on eventually.
I'm running with the right crowd.
That's right. And then David Dolly is our technology guy. And then Larry is our technician at the radio station. So.
Hi, Larry. Thank you.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
And with David Dolly, we like to keep a lot of Davids so we don't have to remember a lot of names.
And he's in the French blue shirt.
Yeah.
Yes.
David, thank you.
All right, we're going to start our program. It's top of the hour. My name is Dave Dolly, your host, and we are KXR Radio 90.7, a nonprofit educational radio station. And during this pandemic, we have launched this fireside chat. It happens weekly at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and we have such awesome guests today, everybody. I can't tell you how grateful we are that these civic leaders took the time to connect with us and our audiences, not only here on the Oregon coast, but we're shared over 50 Facebook pages around the state who are going to engage and ask questions. And we're just so grateful to have our guest, Senator Arnie Roblin, the Honorable Senator Ron Wyden, welcome. Labor Commissioner Val Hoyle for the state of Oregon. And then we have David Brock Smith, representative, and Caddy McEwen, representative, will be joining us shortly, and our program director, Larry Bloomfield. So thank you again for joining us, everybody. And Arnie, take it away.
I just want to say thank you to all those people out there that are watching us or listening to us on the radio. It's really an honor to be invited into your homes and have a conversation every Tuesday evening with a lot of different people who I have had the good fortune of working with over the last 16 years in the legislature. And tonight's group is a particular group that I've had a lot of opportunity to work with, from David Brock Smith to Val Hoyle, both at the legislature and now that she's statewide. And then Ron Wyden, who has been one of those people who made a commitment to go to every county every year and or every year. And that commitment continues to be strong. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But just to get you up to date, we're getting ready to try to open schools. We have had a lot of updates from the governor's office and others about what we need to do as Oregonians personally to take care of this. If you look at the numbers, our infection rate is going down. It's like 5.1 right now. We need to get it under 5 statewide in order to open up our schools, especially for those younger ones. And then we've got to make sure that the rate in each of our counties gets down to 10 per 100,000. And there's not very many counties that have that rate right now. I think there are only 2. There are 14 counties, however, a number of them in my district, that have met the qualification of 30 per 100,000. Which allows them to open that K through 3rd grade. And so we're looking forward to making that happen around the state. And that takes every one of you listening to this radio station or watching it on Facebook to do your part. This is Oregonians doing the right thing for each other. And that means wearing face coverings, making sure you're social distancing, having groups of very small sizes, less than 10, doing all those little things that take and make all Oregonians safe, because if we get those numbers down, we can get our kids back in school. And as I think the governor pointed out this week, right now, if we go at the rate we've been doing, even though we're declining, if we keep this declining rate, we wouldn't be able to open schools in many places until April. So we would like to do that much sooner than that. And that's going to take all of us working together to make that happen. So I encourage each and every person to take their own personal responsibility and working forward to allow us to get kids back in schools where we all know they belong. And I have been really heartened by the work that a lot of people are doing. I've been on the governor's Ready Open Schools task force. And it's been an honor to work with all those educators, students, and others that have been having conversations over the last couple of months trying to figure out how we're going to do this best. And I think that our state has a model for opening schools, really dependent on the science that we're all looking forward to. And so with that general opening, it is my distinct honor to have with us tonight the Honorable Senator Ron Wyden, who has been representing Oregon in ways that I don't think most senators do anyplace else. His willingness to get out and talk to town halls has been pretty remarkable. I had some friends that moved in from California that said, I've never even seen my senator. I didn't even how do you get this opportunity in Little Coos Bay to sit down in a meeting with the senator from the state? And I said, well, it's a commitment he made a long time ago, and we appreciate it. So we're going to ask him how that's going. So how is it going, Ron, with respect to your, now that you've got this new kind of Zoom meeting, Phil, what's happening with your?
Arnie, thank you so much. And just before we go right to that, let me just thank David and Larry with the station. I always felt, and my dad was a journalist, that local radio is literally a gift from heaven. It is such an extraordinary contribution to the quality of life and for our communities. I just want to throw out some bouquets to them. Suffice it to say, town hall meetings are different during the COVID era. I have done 970 in-person town hall meetings, which is what I love, because I think at a time when there's such understandable skepticism about government, nothing does more to really show people that you have some respect than to just be there, let them look in the eye, share their views, and answer questions. So I can't wait to get back to those. In the interim, I have been using something called the Town Hall Project. It's a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. They've been running virtually. They really bring a kind of good government cachet to it. For example, they collect all the questions, but any senator or congressperson who participates doesn't know what the question is ahead of time, so that there still is a kind of spontaneity and a kind of realism in the whole kind of exercise. And suffice it to say, we're trying to open digital doors at this point, and I just can't wait until we get a vaccine, beat the virus, and we can do these in person. And I especially also want to thank you and Caddy for your terrific public service and retiring. And I always feel that the really wonderful people, we don't really let them retire. We keep conscripting them into other tasks, and consider yourself on notice.
There's Caddy, just popped in just to say hi. So
Good.
thank you, Caddy.
Thank you, Senator. That was very kind.
Thank you.
So I wanted to know what have been the greatest challenges in your work as a legislator in dealing with this global health problem, the financial crisis, and its impacts on Oregon. So what have been those biggest issues?
Well, Arnie, a big chunk of the coronavirus package goes to the Senate Finance Committee, where I am the ranking Democrat. We have jurisdiction over Medicare and Medicaid and the state exchanges and taxes and infrastructure and the like. For example, I wrote the unemployment package. The unemployment system really is not very different today than it was back in the 1920s when it was invented. Nobody had ever heard of a gig worker then, or somebody who was self-employed or an independent contractor, or any one of a host of other jobs that are part of our world and not theirs. The Trump administration was really pretty intransigent, and finally I said, you're not going to tell the workers to go pound sand, and if you won't work with us on a reasonable replacement arrangement, because that was my first choice, we'll just go with some rough justice and we'll average the benefit. And so that's how I came up with the $600. Half the people will get more than they normally would. Half the people would get less. My hope is that we'll be able to get Mitch McConnell to come back to Washington soon. I think it was derelict of him to adjourn without our dealing with coronavirus and testing and PPE and the use of the Defense Production Act and education and the like. And my sense is that he's probably starting to hear from his members. 26 Republicans voted in favor of the Pelosi postal bill on Saturday, which indicates that they were feeling some heat from folks in the rural areas. So those are the issues that I'm focused on. It's healthcare, schools, technology policy in rural areas. That's particularly expanding broadband, and a big chunk of the important economics legislation goes to the Senate Finance Committee.
Thank you for that. We're going to take up a few of those other subjects that you just brought up. The first one is, I don't know, but we've been having mailboxes go missing. These little blue mailboxes around the state of Oregon. A few of them have been removed. We know that there's been a big groundswell of concern regarding our postal service and whether veterans are getting their medications, all of the kinds of things that we all expect from our postal service, with an understanding as I grew up that, nothing stops the mail, rain, sleet, whatever, it's going to get through. What are you guys doing? I think you had a town hall about this too, but what are you doing with regard to the postal service and making sure that we're going to have the elections we've had? We've been voting by mail forever. Everybody, including our Republican Secretary of State, say this is the best way to do voting. We need the postal service to make that work. What's happened?
Well, I have been over the last 10 days making a socially distant mass tour of our post offices in order to gather, information. And for example, the Finance Committee has jurisdiction over prescription medicine, most of which is paid, at least for the elderly, under Medicare. 1 out of 5 prescriptions are delivered through the mail. And we were hearing from doctors and others about delays and the like. And look, the key question, Arnie, and you and Caddy and David know this, is to really watch how elected officials really act. It's not just what they say, but act. Donald Trump said point blank that he wasn't going to support full funding of the Postal Service, and that the reason he wasn't was because he felt that vote by mail was riddled with fraud. I think we knew that that was his real position. And now you have the Postmaster General, Mr. DeJoy, pretending all's well, nothing wrong. I think that Oregon, fortunately, over 2 decades, and I'm the nation's first mail-in senator, first senator elected by mail. The second was a Republican, Senator Gordon Smith, Republican of Pendleton. So we've kept it bipartisan, and I like to think that we are well positioned because of our bipartisanship, because of our experience, because of our sense that this is the Oregon way. This is just good, solid government to be well positioned. But I think we all know that Donald Trump is always interested in causing chaos in Oregon. So we're going to have to be very vigilant. I'm telling people to vote early wherever possible. I'm urging communities to put in as many drop boxes as they can. And this is just really a crucial time, in spite of Oregon's bipartisan, lengthy tradition of handling this well. This is a time calling for, I think, intense vigilance.
Thank you for that. And the other one, and you mentioned it also in that little opening statement that you did, we have never been so dependent on distance learning, on internet connectivity than we are right now. Telehealth, a big issue with regard to that. It's blossomed in the state. We've got, but we have a disproportionate problem with rural communities, disadvantaged communities, having access to that vital service. You've been working on this for a long time, because I've been on the Rural Broadband Committee, and we've been looking at some of the stuff you've been presenting for a while, trying to get our reach out into every one of those communities. What can you say is happening now at the federal level with that?
There are 2 programs in particular, one run by the Federal Communications Commission, the other run by the Department of Agriculture, that are there for broadband. But I think we really need to have a national commitment to get broadband into every nook and cranny in America, period, full stop, because it's clear that that is essential for learning. It's essential for healthcare. I led the fight in the first CARES package because Orrin Hatch, the Republican senator of Utah, and I put telemedicine in our chronic care bill, which is the future of Medicare, dealing with chronic illness. And I recently introduced a bill to, in effect, make mental health care a legal right in America through telemedicine. So there are huge challenges here. I believe we'll get in a coronavirus 4 package some additional money for broadband. And I also was asked by the leadership to be the sponsor of the bill to promote additional funding for internet services to the home. But so much more needs to be done. And I don't think this is an afternoon for full electioneering, but I'd sure like to see that be a priority in 2021.
We did it with electricity a long time ago. We can do it with the internet. And I appreciate that
you're being logical, Arnie. And,
that's true.
And the internet is the shipping lane of the 21st century in terms of goods and services. And it also is the key to quality of life at the home. And we've got to make that a national priority and leave absolutely no nook and cranny behind.
So what do you think is the likelihood of a 5th COVID relief package from Congress, specifically as it relates to state and local aid and school funding? Most of these have not gone to the locals. And the other one that comes up in my conversation all the time is the C6s, those people who are trying to help in our state keep the economy going. They haven't been eligible as well. Any ideas?
I very much want to make those C6 organizations eligible for the various kinds of programs and services. So we'll put a focus on that. I think that overall, state and local, it's defined by Mitch McConnell, who said, hey, it's just fine if the states go bankrupt. He didn't even put state and local into his last package. And state and local, as everybody on the coast knows, is particularly priorities like emergency medical. I'm always trying to tell people back east, we in Oregon, as it relates to these programs, the money is being spent on essentials. That's $600 extra per week that I got for unemployment. That money was not spent on a bunch of scarves imported from Europe. That was spent on rent and groceries and medical in our communities. State and local is going for things like emergency medical and firefighters, basic kind of services. So Mitch McConnell can find hundreds of billions of dollars for tax breaks for his buddies. He wants to give everybody a big liability, waiver, and we're going to be trying to get money for these key services at the state and local level that very often are literally a question of life or death.
Yeah, and along some of that, the line with unemployment, that extra money that has really helped a lot of our people and has been the stimulus package for a lot of our communities, because that money is going right back out to the local communities in the form of rent and the form of groceries. What about the executive orders from the president? I think our state is trying to figure out how to find the extra $100, the administrative costs, and all those other kinds of things. But what's your idea? What's your thought about it?
I was with the Oregonian editorial board today, and they basically asked about that. And I said, look, this is $300. It's going to last just a few weeks. We've seen the desperation in our state in the last few days. The lines around the blocks for the people to get the one-time $500 that you all made available at the legislature. And look, what Donald Trump is trying to tell you is that 2 slices of bread is somehow going to feed the family. We need the full loaf, Arnie, which is what the $600 was all about. And my long-term approach is to tie the benefit to economic conditions on the ground. And I did that because Republicans were always saying, hey, Ron, you're the leader for the Democrats on this. We get it. When unemployment's high, you got to have a benefit that allows people to make rent and pay groceries to feed their families. And then they said, but when unemployment goes down, then the benefit should taper down. And I said, that's exactly what my proposal does. You are describing my proposal. In fact, the number 2 member of the Republican leadership, John Thune of South Dakota, came to the floor of the Senate. Ron Wyden's a good guy. He's always bipartisan. He's always trying to work. Love his ideas. And then they all just walked off.
Anyway, that's the lives we live these days. Do you think there's any hope that there will be some additional funding for small businesses and maybe additional PPE for them, PPP, the PPP funds, as well as taking care of our hospitality industry? That's the group on the coast that has just been devastated.
Well, and of course, there are a couple of pieces to the puzzle. Your first question really dealt with the coast and hospitality. Is that what you're most interested in?
Yeah.
I mean, those are low-wage workers, and we've got to get them help. We've got to get them unemployment, assistance. And I think beyond that, what we want to do is make sure that the coast has help for small businesses. The initial part of your question, it's about small business. I wrote the employee retention tax credit, which is really a shot in the arm for small businesses because they get a refundable tax credit. The House has expanded it. So I'm really hopeful that there'll be more flexibility for PPP, in terms of eligibility and the like. Expansion of the employee retention tax credit, which could be very good on coastal businesses, and then more help for the hospitality. Also have a separate bill for restaurants because we know that a lot of our restaurants are on the ropes all over the state of Oregon.
And I guess my final question, and then maybe you can talk about some things that you think we didn't talk about that you were interested in, and we might even invite Kathy or Brock to come in and just say hi one more time, because I know you have been instrumental in working with them and making town halls in every one of our districts. So that being said, what do you feel is going to happen with housing, mortgage and rental assistance? I think we have a lot of people getting very nervous right now with regard to all of these things ending.
We're going to try and extend the eviction moratorium. We're going to try to get more funds at the local level for low-income housing. And I'm getting Arnie to propose something called the DASH Act, the Decent, Affordable, Safe Housing Act, which would start with the first tranche in something that relates to the coast. I've been hearing about kids sleeping in the parks during the winter and buses stopping, to pick them up. That shouldn't happen in Oregon, shouldn't happen in America. The first tranche of the Decent, Affordable, Safe Housing Bill will be making sure that we get a roof over the head of every child without housing.
That was a big part of when we first had, this coronavirus first happened, they made a special coronavirus committee, of which I was lucky enough to be one of the co-chairs. And I would say, we looked at Maslow and said, housing, keep a roof over them, keep food in their bellies. And it's those basic needs that we really need to take care of. And we haven't done as good a job as we could.
Can you imagine someone sleeping outside in a park, cold, probably not having much nutrition, and then trying to get up wet in the morning, get on a bus and go to school?
Yeah, it's remarkable.
It's just, there's no other way to say it's morally wrong. Wrong.
Yeah, and even before this, we had some of that happening. So hopefully the horror of this whole disease is pointing out places where we really need to continue to work on. So thank you for that. Kathy or David, again, thank you both for being here tonight. And I know that you've spent some time with Ron over the years at town halls and other kinds of things. Anything to add or say?
Well, Senator, we're very lucky to have you back there fighting for us, particularly us rural Oregonians. We live a little bit different life than some of our valley and urban counterparts. And I know you understand who we are and what we need. And I'm very grateful for that. I was very heartened to hear you and Arnie talk about broadband in the last couple of legislative sessions. That's been a very important issue for all of us, particularly those of us out here who have people who live up you know, the West Fork of the Millicoma River and up the Agnes and the Chetco, and, you know, multiply that all up and down the coast. And it's just a critical piece for not only, I had 2 telehealth visits myself last week. It's working. It's a good thing, but if you can't access this, it doesn't do any good. And we've got to provide services for our children. So I really appreciate your work on broadband. It was nice to hear you and Arnie discussing that.
David?
Well, listen, I think we understand, as Arnie said, there are a couple of essentials, and you can't have big league quality of life now, whether it's education or healthcare or jobs, with little league infrastructure, and broadband is as basic as it gets.
It is. And it's only not healthcare and education. It's for our entrepreneurs and our business folks
That's
too.
what I meant. Yeah.
It's huge. So thank you.
David?
And thank you for all your wonderful service, Caddy. I don't know if you heard me mention that.
Oh, thank you, Senator.
Senator, it's always good to see you, and I've always
Hey,
appreciated. Thank you. I've always appreciated your work, and especially your work across the aisle, even with me at the state. I appreciate your work, more recently with as a former county commissioner, and thank you for all of your assistance there. You're very accessible and always have been, and I've been grateful for that, for our mutual constituents. Your work with the Association of ONC Counties and trying to find the compromise there for those resources, and with Senator Crapo and working across the aisle to help those our forest dependent counties. And just, I know you have to go, but you are a true bipartisan leader and working across the aisle to assist us all, regardless if we're R's or D's in the legislature. And I can't thank you enough. We did move forward. You and Senator Merkley, of course, assisted recently with our state meat inspection program. We passed that legislation. It is.
Now we got to get the feds to help. I mean, I talked to Sonny Perdue, myself, the Secretary of Agriculture, a couple of weeks ago, and I said, Sonny, this is a no-brainer. People all over our state would like to be able to take control over basic services relating to meat inspection. He goes, you got a good point. Let me look at it. So I'm very hopeful that we'll get some news here shortly.
I really appreciate that. And the next step, if with any relief package that's coming out of the feds, I know there's no earmarks anymore, but if we can identify some resources to assist those small processors in becoming USDA certified through some economic stimulus, so that we can get them up to standards, that is what we need to do in the next phase of that. And I can't thank enough. And our cattlemen, thank you. And Senator Merkley, for all the work that you're doing for them there. Thank you.
Well, as we know, back east, they don't realize the federal government owns most of our land. And what we've got to be able to do is be in a position where we can have multiple use. Look, recreation, as you all on the coast know, recreation is a big time economic engine. That's why, again, one of the aspects of COVID that's so serious is that recreation's gotten clobbered. I proposed the 21st Century Civilian Conservation, Corps to kind of focus on rural jobs. So I think we know that what we've got is a set of economic challenges out there, and we're going to pursue them.
Yeah, and I'll just
Any last comments, Ron, that you want to share with all the people that are watching?
I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Yes, we did. And I want to thank you for taking time. It's not easy to carve out a half hour. I know you're busy, and I know you're going to have to leave us now to go off and take care of some other business. But again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for making yourself available for this talk tonight.
Arnie, big thanks, and this will be to be continued, okay?
That's absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. We're going to start going to meet with our Val Hoyle, who's our caddy. Why did I go blank on that? Anyway, we're going to meet with Val Hoyle in a few moments. But between now and then, I just want to say a couple things. As you know, KXRC 90.7 is the public community radio in Florence, Oregon. a reminder, working with our local I remember working with our local radio people who wanted to start this about 10 years ago, writing letters and getting it going. And it's been impressive to watch what has happened since that 10th year anniversary. KXCR is mostly operated by volunteers who are committed to advancing the important educational and informational programming. As Senator Wyden said at the beginning, those are really important things. However, KXCR's growing operations need financial support. This is the start of the station's yearly fundraiser. So please visit the station at https://www.kxcr.net to donate and to become a KXCR member. And I just wanted to make a mention of some of the station sponsors and organizations that have worked with us over the years to help our local economy. Oregon Pacific Bank, Three Rivers Casino, T.R. Hunter Real Estate, AIC Insurance, Master Recyclers, Money Marketing, Siusula Investment, Tidewater Building Investments. All of these people make a community, and it is community radio stations that give us an opportunity to hear from our local people and have conversations with important guests like Val Hoyle, our BOLI director, Bureau of Labor and Industry director. Before that, I knew her as a representative when I was in the House, and then she became the leader over there in the House, and then decided I want to have control over the whole state. So she left us. She left the legislature and went on to become the BOLI administrator, Bureau of Labor and Industry. Not something that we hear about all the time, but I will tell you, it is a really important job for working people in Oregon. And I appreciate Val being here and being a part of state government. So as Labor Commissioner, Val, what has been the work that you have had to do in BOLI with respect to the COVID crisis?
So first of all, thank you. And, Caddy, David, and Arnie, some of my favorite people to work with. I represented West Eugene and Junction City and Lane County, and I think we all worked together while you were county commissioner, and with Caddy and Arnie in the legislature, really making sure that areas outside of Portland and rural communities had a voice in the process. It is important. And when you talk about rural broadband, where I live just outside of Springfield, we only got rural broadband high-speed internet last December, and that was because of a bill that Senator Wyden championed, that if you're going to provide cable, you have to provide internet. So I'm very supportive because I know it's been life-changing during this pandemic to be able to work from home. So first of all, I just want to let people know what the Bureau of Labor and Industries does, because it is the most important agency that nobody's ever heard of. And I know no one's ever heard of it because I did polling and no one's ever heard of it unless you dealt with our agency. And so the Bureau of Labor and Industries was instituted in 1903 when the legislature was watching wildcat strikes happening all across the country because we didn't have laws that protected workers, and it was people were dying, and they said we need to have somebody that can be a liaison between business and labor and who can stand up for workers. So that's when it got started. Over time, so we enforce all of the wage and hour laws in the state. So if you get your wages stolen, we enforce that. We set the prevailing wages for the states. We make those determinations. We also enforce all the civil rights employment laws for the state and the fair housing laws. We oversee, we certify all the apprenticeship programs in the state. And we have an employment assistance division, which is specifically for businesses where you can call us and ask about employment law. We don't give legal advice, but for those businesses, and I will say it's the majority of businesses who want to follow the law, we're someplace that you can call and say, so on pay equity, how do I manage that when I have 10 people and we kind of all do some of the same things. We can sort of walk you through what the intent of the law is. And I always tell people that our Employment Assistance Division has a clear firewall between them and our Enforcement Division. So people should not be afraid to call our Employment Technical Assistance Division. They also will come out and do seminars. Since COVID, we can't go in person and meet with people. So we've been doing employment assistance seminars online, and we've been able to, and prevailing wage seminars online, and we've gotten a lot more interaction, and I think it allows people to participate more so. When COVID started, you know, people came to us because they were desperate, just like they've come to all of you, whether it's wanting to find out where their unemployment check is, or you know, having questions about masks, or, you know, having questions about OSHA, about health and safety regulations. Now, Bureau of Labor and Industries doesn't oversee OSHA, doesn't oversee the Department of Employment, but we adopted a no wrong door to government approach, in that people who are desperate shouldn't have to figure out which door in government to go through. So we adopted this approach where we were going to try and be as informative as possible. So if someone contacts us about their unemployment, just like with you, we contact the employment department for them. With OSHA, we have a new website, thanks to all of you giving us the money to have a new website that's easier to navigate. Our previous website was written at a graduate or law school level, and if you wanted to file a wage complaint, you had to mail it to us with a wet signature. You can now do that online. If you're a business, you can go onto our website and navigate it easily to find out what the law is. But we put the rules up from OSHA about masks. Even though it's not my agency, I want people to go to one place to be able to find the information. And again, we're just trying to get information to people who want to follow the law. We want to make sure that if you're a worker, you know what your rights are. And again, if you're a person who's been discriminated against in this state, know that you can contact our office, and that we will investigate that and defend you. You know, make sure that you get your wages back, that your civil rights aren't violated. Or if people want to start an apprenticeship program, we're the people you come to. So that's what we do, and that's what we've been working on. I think it's the best job in the state of Oregon, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Thank you very much. And I have to give you a shout out as well, as having been one of the subcommittee chairs of the Ways and Means process, and we had to trim these budgets this last time. We asked each of the agency people to come up with some of it to help us do this in a way that didn't affect people. And a couple of the issues that you've mentioned already were things that were on the block, you know, things like civil rights, issues with regard to apprenticeship programs in Eastern Oregon, something you had committed to, and all of a sudden we were telling you couldn't hire people who, if you didn't have the position you've been trying to hire, but you hadn't got it done yet. And you were a voice of reason and all that, and had a conversation with us and said, could you really give me some flexibility so I can do that? I hope we did the kinds of things we need to do to allow you to do that.
Well, you really did. And that was one of the things in the last legislative session. The legislators from Eastern Oregon, and I talked to businesses there, and I've talked to workers, and what they said is, you know, Eastern Oregon is different than the West Side. So when we would send staff out from Portland to, you know, every once in a while to do employment assistance seminars, right? It was sending someone from Portland out there. It wasn't someone from Eastern Oregon. And it is a different culture. There's different opportunities. There's different types of jobs. So we developed a job that is a split job for apprenticeship, developing and supporting apprenticeship in Eastern Oregon, and then also employment assistance. So yes, the job wasn't filled because we're in the hiring process. And because of that, it was on the chopping block. But I gave my word. I sat down with chambers, I sat down with unions, I sat down with legislators, and I gave my word that we would actually invest in Eastern Oregon and pay attention to Eastern Oregon and understand the differences in Eastern Oregon versus the West Side. And I want to thank you all because you allowed us to keep the position. And I think it's important. If we want the economy to come back, We have to invest in programs. Like, as you well know, and I think everyone here understands, what we've done over the past few decades is we've stigmatized anything that's not a four-year college degree. And so apprenticeships have been pushed to the side. And the fact of the matter is that we have suffered. I'll tell you, you got kids with $100,000 in debt fighting for $15 an hour at a job when you've got someone that's become a lineman with the IBEW, with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, you know, making six figures, having no debt, and owning their own home by the time they're 24. Why aren't we talking about that? And why do we stigmatize that as a second-rate choice? So I'm going to be spending, you know, my time as long as I'm here, and I hope I'm in this job for a long time, talking about how we bring apprenticeship back as a real means to get people proper work experience while they're training for a job.
I couldn't
Thank you
agree.
for that.
with-
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Well,
Wow.
oh, go ahead.
It is. Thanks, Senator. And thank you for all your great work. I'm so happy you're in the position. You're wonderful to work with in the legislature. You're even better to work with as a labor commissioner. And you're doing a heck of a job. And I'm very appreciative of you and your willingness to work with everyone and not come down with a heavy hammer, but work with industry to educate them and give them the information they need to do their jobs and work with their people and their employees. We're with you. I know Arnie and Caddy would agree 100% on the CTE and moving these folks and getting their internships, because if we want to build houses in this state and continue to grow those houses, we're going to need carpenters. We're going to need electricians. We're going to need plumbers. We're going to need the drywall layers. We're going to need those jobs and the people to do them in order to pull ourselves by our bootstraps and get out of this thing. And so we're behind you.
Thanks.
Debbie?
And I think, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
David, what I like about this program is it's a bipartisan program, right? You're all representing the South Coast and you're all together. And although we might have some differences, the fact of the matter is, if we can take a common sense approach, I think most people can agree that it's the right thing to do. So when I came in, I hired a number of people that aren't from state government, right? And I have to say, I inherited an agency of people who are really dedicated to the mission, but you know, who were focused on statute and the procedure. And so what we did was brought in a different approach. Also, I have to say, my agency has not been funded. 40 years ago, this agency was 3 times as large as it is now. So we've been doing a lot with a little for a long time. And what I've done is brought people in and worked with the staff here who are incredibly knowledgeable to talk about how we can enforce things strategically and use our resources better. Meaning that if there is an employer who is doing egregious things to workers, they're probably doing egregious things across the board. And whether you're a worker advocate or you're a business advocate or you're a small business, nobody wants those people who are breaking the law, because if they're hurting workers, they're probably not paying their taxes, they're cheating on other things. No good business should have to compete with people that are breaking the rules, who are taking those shortcuts. So focusing on them as opposed to the people that just made the small mistakes and really didn't intend to do something, you know, we'd love to work with them to help them make sure they're following the law, right? And I'm also very clear that I'm not in the legislature, so I'm not trying to make new laws. I'm really trying to enforce the laws that the legislature has passed with some common sense. And I think having come from the private sector, I've both been a union employee and worked for 25 years in the private sector, I have a different approach, which is most people want to follow the rules, but the ones that don't, I don't have any problem making sure that we're enforcing the law for them, because I think it's in the best interest of everyone in leveling that playing field.
So we got a Facebook Live question about what does the community or community people do if they find a business is not following the COVID-19 rules and whatever? Are you the who do they get a hold of to ask the question?
This is a great question. And going back to the no wrong door to government, that actually is OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health, I forget what A stands for, agency, maybe?
Yeah.
But so we don't enforce that, but so many people came to us with those questions that we put a link on our website, which is oregon.gov/BOLI. We put a link on that website where you can file a report about a business that isn't following social distancing or the mask rules. The other thing we did was we put all the current mask rules onto our website under the employer assistance page, because for a business, they were like, okay, this rule is made by the Oregon Health Authority. This rule is made by OSHA. This rule is somewhere else. And I thought it made sense to have the information in one place. So you can go to our website, oregon.gov/BOLI, and both file something stating that against a business, alerting OSHA that there is a business not following the rules. And if you're a business and you want to know what the rules are, we put that information out there as well.
Hey, Kathy, you have a question for your good friend, Val Hoyle?
I have a comment and a question. First of all, I just got a text that said I looked perplexed, and I'm going to giggle a little bit. This is late August. I'm canning tuna and raising 8 7-week-old puppies. So this is my casual look. And I was sitting here trying to figure out how to swat a fly that's in my house without you all seeing it. So that was the perplexed look that somebody accused me of having. How do I do that? Next, I want to say Val Hoyle is a rock star. And when I came into the legislature in 2013, Val had stepped from being a member of the House of Representatives to the majority leader. And Val Hoyle took me under her wing. I learned so much from you, Val.
Same.
Val is genuine. She came down to the coast. She understands who we are down here, that the rural parts of the state are different than the urban parts of the state. She was willing to invest the time to come and learn about us. And I will forever be grateful to you for that, Val. And when I had a bill that was a little controversial, but it was important for my district, Val had my back, and it meant a great deal. Val, you did good things for my district and David's district and Arnie Senate district because you cared and you took the time to learn and you were honest and genuine, and I will forever be appreciative of that. So I want to make sure that that is on record in this conversation. I have tremendous respect and I miss working with you, but you are absolutely the right person to be the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor and Industries. I couldn't be happier. You and I understand the importance of apprenticeship and training on the coast now, and you're aware of this. We've really never recovered from the recession in the 80s, let alone the one in 08. And we're hurting, and we have high unemployment rates out here. We have very poor counties. We skew a little older. We have issues out here that Arnie and David and I understand, and we work very hard to try and mitigate. But one of the things that's really critical is that training and apprenticeship that's really important to folks who may not want to go someplace else to train. They want to stay in the area where they're comfortable and where they live and where their parents and their kids and their grandkids are and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I'd like to talk just a little bit more about apprenticeship and what do you see for the future of the rural parts of the state in apprenticeship? I know you're working over east, but the coast went so we can provide that training that our folks need to David's point, are going to be, plumbers and contractors and electricians that can help our economy to start to recover.
So I think there's three things, and interesting that you ask about that, because I was on the phone today with Bob Westerman, who is the business manager for the electrical workers union there, and we were talking about exactly this. So what I realized when I came in was that our apprenticeship office, and not through the fault of anyone here, but it's just what the law is, that we were mostly a regulatory agency. So we would check to make sure that each apprenticeship committee dotted every I, crossed every T. and that workforce is completely separate and they do their own thing, and higher ed is completely separate and they do their own thing. So we're going to be working with the South Coast, and we're doing a pilot, Clackamas and Lane County, because the people who run workforce there are really wanting to do something different. We can't just keep spending our money in the same way and expect different results, because it works for some people, but not for others. The other thing is that our apprenticeship program, so for people who don't know, like just formally what an apprenticeship program is, you basically, it's a triangle. So you have an industry standard, right? So you can't have, like, say, to be a plumber, there's an industry standard. You don't want an apprenticeship program that's Joe's Plumbing Shop apprenticeship program where you sweep and then you do one thing. It has to be an industry standard, then certified classroom instruction, and paid supervised on-the-job training. So that makes up an apprenticeship. I think there are so many things that can be apprenticeable that we don't, like the U of O used to have apprenticeship programs, but they've moved away from that. So I think with the Knight campus and their biomedical center, we can set up apprenticeship programs there. In Oregon, we don't have an apprenticeship program for nursing. Many other states do. This, so it's hard to get into nursing programs. We don't have enough space. We need nurses, right? And there are many people that can't afford to not work while they're going to school. So I actually think that we should be looking at the apprenticeship model for the jobs that are available, because and your economy on the coast, you're right, it hasn't recovered. It hasn't recovered from the 80s. And you've taken a larger hit than just about anywhere else in the state, I think, than anywhere else in the state, because of your reliance on tourism. So we need to look at what middle to high wage jobs are on the South Coast, what middle to wage jobs could be on the South Coast. And my agency needs to work with business. And this is the thing, work with business, work with workforce, work with community colleges or other training centers to actually put people into training programs for the jobs that do and could exist. But we haven't had that kind of coordination. So I just hired a new apprenticeship director. She spent 12 and a half years running the Helmets to Hard Hat program for the 11 state Southeast region of the United States for the National Building Trades. She's come here specifically because what I've said is I want to expand apprenticeship to actually work for apprentices and work for business, because again, we have middle to high wage jobs that aren't being filled, and this is how we're going to get our economy back going.
Val, I'm intrigued by your nursing apprenticeship idea. We're fortunate enough to get an $8 million grant from the state to match money that Southwestern Oregon Community College had raised, which is about twice that, at least a little more than twice that, to build a new health sciences building out on our campus here. And it will be opening soon. Because we skew older on the coast, we need more nurses. We have a nursing shortage. That's a very interesting partnership you're talking about. And I'll look forward to learning more about that. This makes a lot of sense.
And previously from the nursing, from the Nursing Association, their focus was what we need people with bachelor's and master's degrees. And I'm not saying that bachelor's and master's degrees aren't good, but 50% of the jobs that we have available need more than a high school education or GED and less than a 4-year plus degree, right? Yeah. So for those 50% of the jobs, those could be apprenticeable, but I don't think that we as a state have been willing to look at programs, whether it's nursing. We just set up, a program and we did it in 2.5 months, right? As opposed to going through this committee process that would take months and months, and then you'd have a white paper at the end. We had heard that, when you train people to clean hospitals, you train them in the hospital. Well, you can't do that with COVID. So we set up an online program, a pre-apprenticeship program for an environmental services technician. But what we did working with the Hospital Association was, and the SEIU and a number of other groups, was we made a ladder to an environmental serve 5-step ladder to a $95,000 a year job as an environmental services manager. So even that entry-level job that previously didn't really lead to anything, we were able to set up an online program and connect it to that higher level job so that when people come into the hospital can say, hey, you're a good employee. How would you like to go on to this path? And that's how we need to start looking at things. So the state of Washington is now, and Lane Community College set up the program. It cost us $7,500 to set up, and the program costs $225 per person. That's what we can do with apprenticeship if we're willing to look outside the box. And sometimes people don't want to change things until they're forced to. And right now, we can't continue with the systems that we have. So those are examples, but I think on the South Coast, you all know what the needs are. You all know what the resources are. And my office stands ready to work with you. Fortunately, you have a lot of people willing to think differently because, again, you have to.
You have to.
The other thing I would say on that line is that with respect to getting kids ready for that, you mentioned this early on, Val, we always provide times in schools to try to encourage kids to go to college. But we need to make sure that the vocational programs are strong at those at the high school level as well to lead into those kinds of other jobs. And I know that you and your office have been helpful in that as well over the years. Your predecessor was really engaged in making sure that that was going to happen with respect to schools. But learning the skills of punctuality, of getting a job well done, all of those things that lead into getting to an apprenticeship program. My dad was a apprenticeship trainer for the unions up in Washington. You come from a firefighting family. I mean, you can see it in your voice that you care about people and about serving. So I want to say thank you for that.
Well, yeah, I put myself through college as a member of a union, Unite Here. I was a union waitress in a hotel in Boston. And my father was a firefighter, a member of a trade union. My grandfather immigrated here and helped start the laborers union in New York back when they didn't have nets under bridges, because it was like, they just assumed and wrote into the plan that you would lose one man for every $1 million spent. And that was acceptable at that time because of the people that worked there, right? They were immigrants, they were people of color. They didn't matter in the same way, and it was just an acceptable loss. So he joined a union and got a better life, as did my father, which is why I was the first person in my family to go to college. My son's a member of UFCW, and he's going to work. We're looking at you will not be surprised, a professional firefighter apprenticeship program.
Very
because
fitting.
it's important. And if with the wildfire seasons that we have now, it's no longer just a season. We need to make sure that we're giving the opportunities for people to go into professional firefighting. It's very necessary, but usually it's the father, brothers, cousins of the people that are already there. So we have a fire service that looks like the fire service that we've had for the past 100 years. So if we're going to give more people opportunity to become firefighters or be in the building trades or be in any of these other crafts, apprenticeship programs really focus on outreach to people that maybe didn't understand those opportunities were available, and gives us a more diverse workforce.
Val, I'm going to proceed, and I know we need to go pretty quick, and we'll let David and Arnie wrap up, but I've done quite a bit of work around long-term care. Yeah. And CNA training and MedTech training is important, and I could see an opportunity there on this.
We're working on an apprenticeship for CNAs in long-term care. Yep, we're on it.
Okay. So I just want to say thank you, Val, for being a part of this show. We actually let it go longer than we were because it was a conversation with all four of us, which was really important. But one of the things that I want to end with is Brock Smith is the chair of our Coastal Caucus. And I don't know that everybody on this call has really understood what that is. And I wanted to give Brock an opportunity to say a little bit about the Coastal Caucus, of which Kathy and I are a part of. So Brock, you can get the last words on our show today. So what do you have to tell us?
Appreciate it, Senator. And again, Val, thank you for all your work, and especially in the CTE apprenticeship programs. It's going to be critical, especially in this COVID era of schooling and how we're going to move that forward. And so we're looking forward to working with you on that. It's been an honor to serve as the chair of the the Oregon Legislative Coastal Caucus, which is the members of the bicameral and bipartisan members that represent our coastal communities up and down. So we have myself, Senator Betsy Johnson is the vice chair, represents the North Coast into Portland. Senator Roblin, of course, represents South Tillamook, South to Coos Bay. Representative McEwen, Senator Hurd, Representative Gomberg, Representative Mitchell, and Representative Brad Witt. We work in a consensus manner and move things forward. Some say we're quite a voice in the legislature because we are a bicameral, bipartisan group and caucus, and we move things that are important, not to the coast, but statewide. And so I appreciate the opportunity to work with both you and Caddy, Senator. I'm going to miss you both dearly. There isn't a bill that I haven't chief sponsored that I didn't try to get your name on it. And the majority of them you co-sponsored and co-chief with me. And that, of course, as Val knows, and Caddy definitely helps move them through the process. And so I thank you for all of your work and your mentorship, both of you, to me.
So again, I just want to say thank you to everyone. And I want to remind people again, this is the annual fundraising time for KXCR Radio. And if you have an indication that you want to help local public radio in places like Florence and all over, we would appreciate you going to the website for KXCR and making a donation. Again, thank you. And I just wanted to say one last time to those people, those groups, those companies that have been there for us over the last 10 years, Pacific Bank, Three Rivers Casino, TR Hunter, Real Estate, Master Recycler, Money Marketing, Siusla Investment, Tidewater Building Investments, and AIC Insurance for all of your support to make these programs available. Again, thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to David Dolly so he can make his final comments. And I'm sorry we're a little over, but it was a great conversation with some really amazing people. So thank you.
Thank you, David.
Guys.
Well,
Thanks,
I'll tell
Matt.
we've got such heartwarming comments on our Facebook Live of people sharing their story of how they pivoted through their work history, through their educational history, as this pandemic has made us all pivot and be changing to the times. And we want to congratulate you, Commissioner Hoyle, in your office for being so responsive and meeting the needs of 2020 during a pandemic. Please express to your staff that it's a whole agency that pulls off what you do. And we're all grateful for everyone coming in early and staying late. And we just can't express to you enough here on the coast. What you see here today are relationships, camaraderie, working together. This is something not seen in many states. And we are so grateful that you represent us and you are demonstrating putting the needs of the people first and waking up every day on how to serve. So we can't tell you all enough on behalf of our audiences and across the state. Thank you, Senator Roblin, Senator Caddy McEwen, and your husband. Welcome to our program in wrapping up here. And Brock Smith, thank you very much. And Commissioner Hoyle, again, thank you very much. Everyone have an excellent evening. We will see you next week here. Or actually, we're going to be replaying a couple shows over the next couple weeks of our previous interviews. So I'm Dave Dowley. Thank you for joining us. You can see more of our programming at kxcr.net, and have a good evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.